Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Susanne McNinch and Chez Filippini.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. We have the honor today of having Dr. Alice Hughes with us to continue our Spiritual Works of Mercy series by talking about instructing the ignorant. But as always, if you haven't, please check out our last episode where Bishop Bill kicked off our Spiritual Works of Mercy, talking about admonishing the sinner. So it was a great episode, but we're back in the studio, and Dr. Hughes, wow, thank you so very much for being here today.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. It's nice to come back here because this is where I went to school at St. Stephen's. All my sacraments and all my education started right here.
Super.
Not here.
Yeah.
If you've never been to the Pastoral Center before, guys, as you walk in the employee entrance every time, there's the cornerstone, the stone commemorating St. Stephen's.
School.
We got a living stone right here with us. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, Dr. Hughes, this podcast is named Gaudium et Spes after the document from Vatican II, which, given your breadth of knowledge, I'm sure you're well acquainted with. And we always start with the first line, which goes, "The joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys, the hopes, and the griefs and anxieties of the followers of Christ." So you spent a long time following Jesus, been with a lot of people. Any current joys or hopes or griefs or anxieties, anything springing to mind? What's going on in life right now?
Well, for me personally, I think one of the greatest joys is that I'm back in a parish.
Yes.
Because I was out of parish ministry and diocesan ministry for so many years. To be back on the ground with God's people in parishes and working with the adults and working with the Order of Christian Initiation. Mm-hmm. It's been a great gift and grace from God that I'm back here.
Very cool.
And back home in Pensacola.
Yeah.
Nice.
Suzanne.
Yeah, well, we just celebrated a wonderful Jubilee Mass.
We did.
This past weekend. So, yeah, and my husband and I were able to attend. So I think it was fantastic.
The silver anniversary, right?
Yeah,
the silver anniversary.
Yeah, 25.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, very cool.
Yes. Thank you for putting that on. I mean, it just was, over 100 couples. Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had some couples in there married 60, I think the Rolls marriage couple was 75 years this year. So 25 years, you got a long road ahead of you, Suzanne. But thank you for coming. It was awesome to have you and your husband we're always seeing each other at work and stuff, but it's great to see the spouses in action. Mm-hmm. Man, Jubilee Mass, also Super Bowl Sunday. Amazing coincidence of things.
Yes.
What's going on in my life? Do you guys want to hear the worst road trip story ever?
Sure.
In condensed version? No, I'm just kidding.
Pile it on. Yeah, we're ready.
We went up to Pennsylvania for my father's rite of committal and burial. So it was a tough occasion, but also beautiful. Saw a lot of family members. But my gosh, guys, every step of the way was this very visceral testimony to the reality of God's constant providence and sometimes the ways that are annoying. So the biggest hiccup was Gabriel got a stomach bug about about 18 hours into the journey. And it just kept happening over and over and over and over and over again. And we were like, we got to get back home. So we finished up with the rite of committal and burial. And we were like, we're going to get in the car at 3 o'clock in the morning and drive 1,000 miles and just be home. And so we get up at 3 a.m., get in the car by 3:30, drive this back country road out of my sister's house in Pennsylvania. And I just start seeing the dashboard instruments start going like, meow, meow. And I was like, no. So I turned the car off, turned it back on, maybe thinking it's some kind of temporary battery issue. Yeah. It never is. And right as we're about to get in the interstate in 25-degree weather in the middle of nowhere, we just lurch into a 24-hour gas station, thankfully. And the car just goes, and it was done. Not done, but it was an alternator. And I had this issue before. I couldn't remember at the time, but there we were. No power in the car. Luckily, we had a gas station, but shivering, trying to call tow trucks at 5 o'clock in the morning. Luckily, we still have family connections up there. So my mom, one of our closest business associates, picked us up he drove an hour away, picked us up at 5:30 in the morning, brought us back to my sister's. And then my sister has a brother on the different sides of the Step family, who just came into his body shop out of the goodness of his heart. He's a mechanic, and he's usually not open on Saturday, but he had us fixed and on the road within, I think, 10 hours or something like that. Wow. But I tell you, a guardian angel, we prayed a guardian angel prayer like so many others do right before they get on the road. Please protect us. That guardian angel was like, I'm not letting these idiots get on the road. And he just zapped the alternator right as we were pulling by that gas station, because we have gotten 2 hours farther, 3 hours farther. We've been stranded. No family to pick us up, stuck in a hotel for days. So guardian angels are real. Wow. Sometimes they don't just lift you up and bring you to where you need to. Sometimes they just kill your alternator in ahead of time. So we made it back in one piece, thankfully.
Well, it's great to have you back.
Thanks. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. You've been sharing that story like, you have no idea.
I know.
Well, Dr. Hughes, we this series on the spiritual works of mercy is sometimes an interesting angle. Sometimes it's clearly kind of a priest angle with, the next episode will be on counseling the doubtful, and we had Bishop talk about admonishing sinners. Mm-hmm. But there's other spiritual works of mercy that are very much for every Catholic, and take a variety of forms. And this one is an interesting one, especially the wording, instructing the ignorant. So we have you here for your expertise, your long faith formation expertise. But before we get there, we got to know who you are, where you came from, how you came into this ride, became a doctor. So just,
Well, I came into this world from my mom and my daddy, who are like, I'm 5 generations from Pensacola.
Oh, wow.
Actually, not Pensacola, Old Warrington.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
Which is in the Navy Yard. And you know when you're old Pensacola, when you say the Navy Yard, because everybody says NAS. Well, there was a section there of Warrington. And my mama, my grandma, my great-grandma were born out at one little place that's still out at the Navy Yard, right on the water. It was the Bauer House, and they were from, my ancestry came from Bavaria. Okay. And they had a little grocery store, and they lived upstairs. So then when they got kicked out, in the 20s or 30s, I think they got kicked out because they were squatters, and the new Warrington came. So I grew up in Warrington. My mother was very progressive, because in the 50s and 60s, you didn't cross parish boundaries. We were in St. John's Parish.
Okay. I was about to say.
My mama was raised by, my mama was reared in Evansville, Indiana, because her daddy was from Evansville. And she was reared by the St. Ferdinand Benedictines. She found out there were Benedictines here at St. Stephen's. And there were Mercies at St. John's, and my brother was in 1st and 2nd grade, and she found out Benedictine. She took him out at 2nd grade. She took him out and put him over here. Wow. So I was 4 years younger. So my career was over here, and I thought my mother was very progressive, because that was in the late 50s. So she was way ahead of her time to jump parish boundaries like that. And at that time, Father O'Neill was the pastor, and he said, "Don't worry, as long as I'm pastor, you will be my parishioners." Oh. So I grew up here at St. Stephen's, then went to Catholic High, and still had Benedictines. So I went to Cullman, Alabama, to Sacred Heart and St. Bernard for my college education. Knew I would eventually join the convent, because Benedictines, we are the best, because we were the oldest. and I still wear my Benedictine medal all the time, because I'm still a Benedictine at heart. So I entered the convent. My mother got sick, so I had to wait until my mother died. And then I entered the convent in 1979 and taught in Cullman Town, at Sacred Heart in Cullman Town. And then St. Bernard reopened their high school. And I went to St. Bernard for a year. I was their department head for theology and the campus minister. But as I like to say, I was the theology department. so the guys realized, why are we paying the sisters? We got a lot of theologians here. Right. So then they sent me to Birmingham, to John Carroll. John Carroll was always kind of a rival of Pensacola. They would get a lot of publicity that Catholic High didn't. So I always said, you send me to Birmingham, because Birmingham was a big city. I grew up here. It's not a big city. And I said, you send me to Birmingham, make me teach at John Carroll, I'll leave. And well, I met my husband.
Oh, very good.
He was a good Birmingham boy, and I asked if he ever wanted to go to Pensacola, so he came to Pensacola, and I got a job teaching at Sacred Heart, which ironically was the first place I ever taught, because when I taught at St. Thomas More, when I got out of college a year early, and I got a job at St. Thomas, and I taught 2nd grade there, and I was going to teach at St. Stephen's, and I came and asked the principal, and she says this was their last year.
Oh.
So then I went to St. Thomas, which was okay because my third grade teacher was teaching at St. Thomas, so that kind of helped me get the job too. So when I came back, St. Thomas was already closed. Now, there's a pattern here.
This is our St. Thomas right down the road here.
Yes, right down the road there with Father Shum, who, when I came out of the convent, was at Sacred Heart in my 5th grade class. So I taught him, and I taught 5th grade homeroom, and I taught language arts and math, but I was 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade religion teacher. Okay. And I was a DRE for the cathedral. So then I went to St. Anne's in Gulf Breeze. There was an opening came, and I was director of education, ran the preschool and the daycare and the faith formation program. And then I went back to Catholic High, which is still in existence, and I went there, which is odd. And they're still in existence, and I taught there. So, and so is Sacred Heart. I forget Sacred Heart's still in existence.
Yeah,
that's
booming.
2 out of all the places that I taught that are still there. And then I got a job in Longwood, Florida, right outside of Orlando, back in a parish because I wanted to go back in a parish. Mm-hmm. And then out of nowhere, I got a call from Jackson, Mississippi, that they needed a director of faith formation for their diocese. And so I went to Jackson, and I was the director of faith formation, but also the director for lay ministry and developed their lay ministry program. Jackson's very much like Pensacola. We had a lot of land. We have no Catholics, but we had the land. Jackson was the largest geographic diocese east of the Mississippi, and I think Pensacola must be the second. Yeah. Because they're so similar. That's why it was so easy to incorporate into Jackson.
It's the whole state except for the bottom.
It's the entire state of Mississippi, and you get the little tiny bit down on the coast. And I used to tell my counterpart, you got that and I got this. There's something wrong with that. So out of all of our parishes, we had about 110 parishes. 25% I trained to be lay pastors because we just didn't have enough priests. We had a sacramental minister that would take care of about 3 or 4 parishes. And then the lay pastor would take care of usually, sometimes they got 2 parishes, not just 1 parish. It was an awesome experience working with people that loved being Catholic. You could see the joy on their faces. You could see the joy on their faces when they went to Mass. And then I never realized it. During the summer, I ran a program for the lay ministry, and we took 2 weeks out of the summer, and they would come, and I would be myself, my counterpart down in Biloxi Diocese, and I usually had 2 priests. So we had Mass every day. And one time, one of the ladies came up and said, "Wow, this is so nice to have Mass every day." And I said, "It is, isn't it?" the chancery in Pensacola and Jackson was right across from the cathedral. You went to Mass every day. So, and it dawned on me the joy of being able to go to Mass. Right. And not just have a communion service 3 weeks out of the 4. You might get Mass once a week. People don't realize the rural areas that are around. This diocese would appreciate it. And then I got a call from New Orleans Archdiocese. And I was on several national committees for National Catholic Educational Association, and a subsidiary of theirs was the Chief Administrators of Catholic Education, which was diocesan directors. And I was the only religious representative on that one. So I knew a lot of superintendents because they were all superintendents. And so I had that connection. Archbishop Amon at one time was also the moderator for NCEA. So I got my interview, and Archbishop offered me the job. So then we left Jackson and went to New Orleans. And I was in New Orleans for 10 years. So for diocesan ministry, I was in diocesan ministry getting close to 20 years, and I really missed parish work. There was no secret from Bishop Latino, and I don't think from Archbishop either, that I would apply for jobs in Pensacola when they come up. Because I missed home. Yeah. But I really missed working with God's people in the parish. It's wonderful to work with God's people in the diocese, but there's something being on the boots on the ground. As Pope Francis would say, you have to smell like the sheep. You have to be down with the sheep. Right. And God blessed me when New Orleans had its problems and I got to come back home. And God gave me a reward of letting me be back on the ground with the sheep.
Wow.
And I love being there.
Nice. Well, we're so grateful you're back in our diocese. I mean, what an incredible career you've had. And
I always say God has a sense of humor. I'm the type, I don't like to move. I thought my whole life, I knew I was going to be a Benedictine sister teaching primary grades. I was never going to move out of Coleman because I was a monk. I was never going to move. And then God started me on a journey. So he has quite a sense of humor. And I don't like bridges either.
Oh, gosh.
So he sent me to the bridge over across in Pensacola to Gulf Breeze at the time that barge hit it in the late 80s when the bridge was out. And then he sends me to New Orleans, and they're like bridges everywhere you turn, especially that 23-mile bridge. Yeah. So at least he gave me the reward of coming back home. And I only have to cross a bridge every now and then.
Wow. Amazing.
But January is 52 years that I've been working in the church.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I think we need to have Jubilees services for her. So, well, good. So you're back here. You're at St. Rose of Lima, correct? Walk me through your day. What's your day-to-day like? What do you...
Well, God's also blessed me that I only work part-time.
Okay.
So generally I'm there from Wednesday from about 8:30 till about 8:30 at night.
Okay.
And then once a month I do the welcome desk on a Sunday. And then whenever anybody needs me, I like to do interviews with people that are coming into the process. And so I will try to work around their schedule. Okay. But it's nice to be able to work with adults. I loved working with children. I worked with children for many, many years. I always say if it weren't for children, I wouldn't have had a job. But it's nice to work with adults, to do adult faith formation, something they're really interested in. And generally, because younger people have children, they have, every kid now has 2 or 3 different things they have to go to after school. Parents work. So most of the people that we get in the evening are going to be our older adults. But they're there because they want to learn.
Right.
That thing that my heart's restless until it rests in you, my God. They're restless. They want to know all there is to know about God.
Wow.
And our time is limited when we get older. So, but it's nice to be back. Monsignor Reed, I have known him since my Gulf Breeze days at St. Anne's. The plays that he used to do. I used to get him to come over in the summer. We would do a 3-week, we'd break his play open, and we would take out the theology, the music, the art, PE, social studies. We had a whole day of it for 3 weeks. Wow. And so I have known him for many years. And when I came back and we moved over to Pace instead of to Pensacola, and the second week, he said, "You're retired. How retired are you?" I said, "What do you want?" He said, "Would you be interested in being the director of adult faith formation and the RCIA process?" And I said, "I would love it." So again, God bless me by putting me in Pace. Every place I've been, I could see God in that journey.
That's fast. So when it comes to the spiritual work of mercy, I can't think of a single sector that you haven't instructed the ignorant, because so maybe we'll start with different angles here. We're all God's children. We're all ignorant in our own ways. Maybe we can look at approaching Catholics, especially in New Orleans, where everybody's Catholic. Not everybody. A lot of people are Catholic. Maybe there's not a lot of participation or knowledge in the faith, and I assume a lot of your work would have been bringing people who are already sacramentalized, but not necessarily catechized. Tell us some of the tricks of the trade, the approaches, the difficulties, the successes, anything when it comes to instructing not as well catechized Catholics.
And I think that the thing that surprised me the most when I went to New Orleans was the first rite of election, seeing so many people that were catechumens that had never been baptized. Because growing up around here, you think, there's only 2 churches, there are 2 religions, the Jewish religion, because there are a lot of synagogues, and the Catholic, because there are a lot of Catholic churches. Until I lived there, I didn't even know they had other denominations. Everybody was Catholic. And it was a shock to see there are a lot of people that aren't baptized. It was also a shock to see that there are a lot of people that were not catechized in the sense that they would get baptized as children, as infants, but then the parents didn't bring them to anything else. They didn't catechize them in that formation. They didn't go to church with them, which was a big challenge because I had 119 parishes. I had 22 high schools. At the time when I first went there, there were like 60 and closer to 80 grade schools and 4 colleges that we worked with. So, I mean, luckily in Jackson, I was just me. In New Orleans, I had a staff of 7 other people besides myself. And to get them to go out to the different places, the schools were easy because they were Catholic schools.
That's right.
And they were being instructed. I don't know. Hopefully, we were forming them. There's a difference between informing and forming. I would always take 3 words every year, and the ones I really like to hang on to was that we inform, we form, and we transform.
Okay.
And that was the 3 biggest things that I tried to do in Jackson and in New Orleans and now at St. Rose, is you inform people. That's just the beginning. And then you form them from that information. The information doesn't do you any good if you're instructing people. And the difference between ignorance and stupidity is that ignorant people don't know. Right. They haven't been taught. So you take these people and you give them this information. That's wonderful. But what are they going to do with it? Right. Then you have to form them like Isaiah. God takes clay and he forms us. Well, God gives us the ability to do that with people. And that formation is only to transform them. And if you can get people to that level of transformation, then you're getting all the spiritual works of mercy, and you can throw in the corporal works of mercy and the 10 Commandments. Right. You can throw in everything because you've transformed the world. If you really buy into all of this, it's a very simple thing and plan, but it's something else to get it out there to the people, to get parents to understand this is their job. But it's their job because they're very faithful. Many Catholic parents, a majority, are faithful in getting their children to faith formation classes.
Yep.
But they also need to get themselves.
Right.
Because children will look and say, well, Mom and Daddy don't go. Why do I have to go? Well, because you have to go. At St. Rose, we have an adult faith formation program also during religious education. I've done that every parish I've been. This is the most successful one I've ever seen. We have about 20 to 30 parents that come every week when their children are in religious ed. The parents are in there. Nice. So the parents are being formed the same time the children are. Yeah. So when they go home, after they can either go to Mass before or after, because we have 9:15, so they have the 8 or 10:30 Mass. So they can go to Mass, go to faith formation, and go home and talk about it in the car.
Yeah,
that to me is one of the biggest things of instructing the ignorant. Is you give them something that they can digest. Being a Benedictine, Lectio is so very important. And part of Lectio is ruminatio, where you ruminate on it. So you take it and you make it yours. You chew it and you bring it back up, and you chew it again and you bring it back up. Right. And then that transforms you. So the whole thing of instructing these people, it goes beyond 12 years of faith formation in parishes or in schools. And when you get to the parish level, it's much harder. I had a thing in New Orleans called, was it 30 versus 30? 30 hours of religious education in a parish and 30 hours in a Catholic school. You can't do in a parish what you can do in a Catholic school, except for when I tried that 3-week program at St. Anne's. That was, we tried to make up for that lack of what we do. But we're not the primary educators. Parents are the primary educators of themselves and of their children. Yeah. So when you're forming, it's important to let parents know from early on baptism. When you're working with families at baptism, to let them know what are you bringing these children? It's not just a nice little ceremony there and you have all the family here and you put some water on the child and that's it. And we see, I call it the Church of 7 years sometimes. We see them in 7 years for First Communion, maybe 7 years again for confirmation, and we pray we see them for their wedding. And the cycle starts again. The cycle has to be broken because we don't do the works of mercy if we don't break this cycle, because we're not doing, and it's not just instructing, because that's very clinical.
Yeah.
It's got to be, you're forming the ignorant, and you're allowing them to have this opportunity to come one with God.
Yeah.
And one of the basis of all faith formation, and I still want to say RCIA, is the OCIA process. That is the basis of all instruction. Of all that we do in the Catholic Church. That is your basis for faith formation for children, for adults. Because you look at the process, you look at all the stages. That's the spiritual works of mercy.
Yeah.
All the phases. You can incorporate the spiritual works of mercy into everything that you do in faith formation and in the OCIA process.
Doctor, you brought it up, so let's run with it. So, right, this spiritual work of mercy, of instructing the ignorant, is fundamentally rooted in, it's in the DNA of the church. You can see Jesus doing it on Easter Sunday with the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. You can see Philip the deacon doing it with the Ethiopian eunuch. It's all throughout. It's the whole scriptures, it's St. Paul's letters. But then we come up especially with this, this robust, mystery-filled ritual process that is the rite of Christian initiation, now the order of Christian initiation. So tell us about it. What is it? Where does it come from? How's it changed? What is this thing?
The beauty of it comes from the early church.
Okay.
And we've tried to revive the... I was in a parish in the early 80s when I was in the convent, and that's the first time I ran into it. And I went in... the old North American catechumenate group. They used to do Beginnings and Beyond. And so I went to my first Beginnings and Beyond in Memphis at Christian Brothers College. Okay. And it was an awesome experience because, again, being a Benedictine, I'm also a liturgist. And everything revolves around the liturgy. And everything, that's why RCIA or OCIA, that is the basis of everything, because it's liturgy.
Right.
Liturgy is our basis of who we are as Catholic Christians, because it comes out of our Judaic roots. So everything that we do has to revolve around that. So the Order of Christian Initiation revolves around that. So everything that we're doing, we're exposing people to come into a relationship with God. Who are already there, or they wouldn't come knocking on our doors. Right. I think one of the most important things when I'm working with the OSHA, and at St. Rose we call it OSHA, and we laugh and we say we're a government agency
Not the
now.
government work. Susanne, you know this.
Yes. We're still the church. We're not the government. I like to listen to people's stories. I think that's the best thing about being back in a parish. I get to hear people's God stories. And they are some awesome stories, because they would not be knocking on our door if God hadn't knocked on their door, or if they haven't knocked on God's door. Knock and I'll answer. Right. And they've answered God's knock and God's answered theirs. And to hear them wanting something that they're not quite sure that they want, but to work with them. They're ignorant of the church. It's astounding this year. I've got people in the 25 process and the 26 process right now. And there's so many young people. And I think the last 4 or 5 young men that I have interviewed, they're doing this research. It's all head knowledge right now. They are doing massive research, and they're coming to the conclusion that the Catholic Church is the one. And so they're knocking on our doors after doing this massive research. So they're not ignorant in that sense, but they're ignorant in the sense of, where do I take this? Right. What do I do with it? What's my next step? So that next step is that formation. And that's what the early church did. And we come out of that process, because in the early church, it really was Christian initiation of adults. They were not baptized.
Okay.
They were not Christians. They were either Jewish, which was an easy end for them because originally we were just a sect of Judaism. And then they were pagans, maybe. And so we had to form them into who is this Jesus? Who is God that made covenant many thousands of years ago? And who was this Jesus that came and said that he was the fulfillment of that covenant? Who is he? And then they would instruct them. They would literally walk the journey. They would get somebody within their community and walk with that person for a minimum of 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell people 2 years now. They didn't go down to the Baptist church.
That's right.
But these people walked with them. And you had to show conversion. Okay. You had to show. We didn't have these things, these spiritual works of mercy written down. They lived them.
Okay.
So you would journey with that person, and you would have to present them to say there was a change, a metanoia, a change in that person. Even so much so that they would have to change jobs. They may not have a job.
Yeah.
The Christian community came to their aid, offered them food, offered them shelter, until they could find a job within the Christian community. Now that's really being called.
Right. If you're a Roman soldier, most of the Christian communities would not accept you.
Or worked in the Roman government.
Yeah. It presupposed you were involved in pagan rituals or you killed people, and so therefore you got to change your job. Yeah.
And Caesar was a god.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you had to leave that way of life. Now that's true conversion, that you totally change your mindset around, and even to stay in that process that long. So they would come. You would be invited to the community, but you wouldn't be really invited to the depths of the community because we don't know who you are. We need to know who you are before we let you in. So they would have the liturgy of the word. They would read these letters from the apostles. They'd read the stories about who Jesus was, because the Gospels weren't even written first. It was the letters written first. So, Susanne, I think I want what you have. There's something, I have known you ever since I was a kid, but you're different now.
Right.
And so you would tell me why you're different, and you would invite me. But you wouldn't invite me all the way. You would have to make sure you had to see that change in me.
Okay.
And then when you saw that change in me, you would invite me to this ritual washing. And we would go down to the water.
Okay.
And I would be baptized. And then you would bring me in with my white garment on. And you'd bring me to the table to where we would break bread together. Isn't that? Liturgy is... Now, don't get me off on liturgy because...
I missed the part. Where's the multiple choice bubble test? Did they not have that back then? If you got an 80?
That's true. Yeah. And did you not get to come in? Did you have to wait for a while? It was a wonderful experience. So we pattern the modern day after the early day. So originally when they were bringing it back in after Vatican II, it was for people that were not baptized. Well, where are you going to find people that aren't baptized? You're going to find them in Africa or Aborigines. You're going to find them in places that were not Christianized. And then we can look around and we say, oh, we have some too. We have people that were not Christianized, that for some reason never heard about Jesus or never got baptized. Families might not have been people that went to church. So you do have people that have not been baptized. So they meet people like Susanne, and they want what she has.
Right.
That's why witnessing is so vitally important. To witness what we receive, that's our job. Jesus said, go out and make disciples. Our job is to go out, find them by how we act. I had a lady that still is active on my team now, and she was in the first year that I came in. So this is my 5th RCA group. She worked at one of the local colleges, and there was one of our deacons that worked with her. And the exact same, she saw something that he had. Now, she was already a Christian, but she saw something in him that she wanted the same thing. She wanted to become a Catholic. He made such an impression on her. That's the thing. That was the early church. And that's our route for the OSHA, for OCIA. Our roots are you go out and you make a difference to where people want to come to you. Wow. We don't proselytize as Catholics, but we evangelize. And I know Bishop Walk is in with evangelization. We're evangelists. We're not proselytizers. Our actions show our evangelization. Our actions show how do you act at Walmart? How do you drive? That shows how you reflect who you are. It's easy, especially as a Catholic educator for all these years, it's easy in a classroom or in a parish or in a diocese to look holy. It's something else when you're out in the world. As I used to tell one priest in Jackson Diocese, Father, I don't know how they act in the real world. He said, what do you mean? He says, this is a real world. And I said, I don't think so. My husband will tell you, I've never been in the real world. I've only been in this world. But how do you act when you go to Walmart?
Right.
Are you nice to people? How do you act when you're driving? Do you drive the speed limit?
Yeah, it's true.
That makes you people want to get around you.
Yeah.
How you act. How do you act around your family?
Right. I see a lot of similarities. I spent some time doing Navy recruiting, and, we recruited in a lot of rural areas and stuff. And so, when my recruiters got off work, I said, you walk into a grocery store, and even if you're not in uniform, people are going to recognize you, and they're going to watch you. They're going to make opinions of you, and not only of you, but then that's going to directly reflect on our organization, and then the Navy as a whole, and our nation, and all service members, and everything else like that. So you're really ambassadors out in your community, and I think that is so relatable to a lot of what we do too. So.
If you want to instruct the ignorant, the best way to teach is to model.
Yeah.
That's and I love teaching. I wanted to be a teacher since I was first grade here. I wanted to be a teacher. But it's how do you model that?
Right.
Because the instruction is easy. Now, it's easy to get up and teach.
Yep.
You can get them a piece of paper and you can say, read this. But it goes deeper than that. Because then when you instruct them, how are you going to comfort them? How are you going to, when the times get bad, how are they going to deal with that? How are they going to deal with their own sinfulness? Because when you really get deep into this and you're forming people, then you get deep into their soul and who are they? And how do they handle some things that may come up? And that's all the spiritual works of mercy. And that's where our job as processing, and I love it. RCA or OCIA is a process. It's not a program. Right. There's a beginning, but there's no end. Programs have a beginning and end. This has no end. This faith formation has no end. And that's what I try to tell people. I've tried to tell them in diocesan ministry and parish ministry. Your formation doesn't end until you see God. Right. And then it comes into fruition of what it is. Because we're leading people on their journey. We're walking with them. And that's the beauty of OSHA. You get sponsors. And I do sponsor workshops because it's just not an honorary title. There's a lot of work in it. Wow. There's a lot of time you're going to commit to me and to these people. You have to be there every week with them. You go to Mass with them. You take them out for coffee. You work with them. They see what it is to be a Christian. They see what it is to be a Catholic Christian. And they have to commit to do this before they're a sponsor. But what an awesome thing to be able to walk a journey with God's people. One person in particular to walk their journey where God's taken them. Right. So the best part of this ministry is hearing their God stories. And when they either email or they call and they want more information, and I'll call them and say, well, do you have this time on a Wednesday? I said, I'd love to bring you in. I'd love to hear your God story. Because everybody has a God story.
Well, there's so many things.
I know.
Well, I want to ask, so we're talking about OCIA, especially in places you've worked, both here and you mentioned Jackson, a whole lot of non-Catholics we got. And then sometimes we have people come into our church who, or you meet people at Walmart or something like that who have a bit of misinformation about what they've truly been given not the truth about what the church is or believes or our practices and stuff like that. in your years of work, how have you, is apologetics an arena combat sport, or how do you instruct people with misconceptions about the church, with charity, with grace?
Because most areas in which I worked, with the exception of New Orleans, and New Orleans, believe it or not, has sections like that.
True, yeah.
Because people think of New Orleans as the city, but you go up and across to North Shore, and you get up into Bocalusa and Pearl River area, you back in the South. You're back in the not Catholic South. And I think one of the hardest things is when they come into the process, they come with misnomers about the Blessed Mother. That's one of the big ones, and confession.
Okay.
Those are the two big ones. They think we worship Mary, and that you can only tell your sins to a priest and not to God. So it's forming them around who Mary is, how we see Mary. We don't worship her. We ask her intercession. I always tell them, I said, Mary was a good Jewish mama. She would go to her son, and she'll ask him something, and he's a good Jewish son, and he'll give her what she wants. I said, go to Mary and ask her if you want something, because she's a good Jewish mama. It's that concept that God is who we worship. The Trinity is who we worship. But we have saints, and we have saints that intercede for us, just like you might intercede for somebody, for your children. You intercede to your teacher sometimes for your child. It's that concept. And for reconciliation, you can go straight to God because God knows what's in your heart, but it's something about going and sitting down face to face with someone and say, I'm not perfect, but I'm really sorry. And to hear that human voice say, it's okay. God loves you and forgives you, and in God's name, I'm going to forgive you. And that touch is so important in our sacraments. All of our sacraments revolve around senses. But it's that trying to work through, and not only working through, because if they're coming to us, they're working through it. It's helping them deal with their families.
Okay.
I've had one several years ago that they didn't tell their families for a couple of years that they became Catholic. I have one now in our process that's dealing with that because of all the misnomers that are out there. When I was in Coleman town, we had this very, very nice man that was our maintenance person for Coleman, Sacred Heart in town, and for St. Bernard. And he was from a little place called Eva, Alabama, which is just a little bit north of Coleman. And he told his family he was taking this job at the Catholic Church. And his family said, oh, Gary, why? You know the mess you're going to have to clean up on a Monday? He said, what do you mean? He said, we know they do sacrifices on the altar.
Oh, my goodness.
The best thing that ever happened, Gary took that job, and he went back and he said, those Catholics aren't anything like you think they are. But it's that ignorance, because they don't know, that you deal with and you work with it as it comes. And the forgiveness part of the spiritual works of mercy. How do you forgive your family and yourself? Because you're kind of becoming a traitor to your family. How do you live with that? When they see that formation taking place after you've gotten to know, then their family starts seeing, they see something in you I want.
Right.
And that's how you start transforming, because they see you're not the same person. There's every sacrament makes an ontological change. Your very essence, your very being changes with every sacrament. So there is a change that they see. And that's what the early church saw. That's why the church could grow. The church didn't, if you didn't see that, the church wouldn't have been here for 2,000 plus years. So that's what we try to do with OCIA. That's what we try to do with our children in our adult faith formation. But it starts not with people that are on this ministerial level. It starts with the people on the ministry level of being in the world.
Right.
What they see at Walmart, because we're not going to get them we're not going to get people that have never been baptized or are not Catholic into a process becoming Catholic if they don't see something somewhere else. They're not going to come. So there is something going on in the world right now that people are seeing, because we've got 40-something people between the 2 years, between 25 Easter Vigil and the 26 Easter Vigil. I'm around like 40-something people, and they're young people.
Right.
They're wonderful. I mean, for somebody that's older, that's worked in the church for a long time, it does my heart good to see there are young people that will come up, young people in ministry right now that will come up. I mean, if you're young, it's nice. It's nice to see that, because it gives us hope that, there are going to be people that are going to be here behind us. For a while, when we weren't quite sure.
I know we'll even cut this out of the end, but how's the internet doing as far as instructing the ignorant about? Is it a great help and it's bringing people? Okay.
Things like Formed.
Okay.
I use Formed all the time. It's an awesome process. I used it. I did it in Jackson. I mean, in New Orleans, I tell people to get Formed. It's really a tremendous program. A lot of times people can't come face to face. We stream our Wednesday night courses, but sometimes people are working or they're in school. They can't do it. So I give them Formed, and then I work with them individually. But I'll either use Symbolon or some of the other stuff on Formed. The internet's a great tool if you use it properly. You just don't say, this is a program, you go use it, and when you think you're ready, come see me.
Right.
You have to sit down with people. You have to have discussion. Yeah. Jesus never said, here's this program, you use it, and next time I'm in your neighborhood, I'll come and see how you're doing. Right. He said, this is how I want you to live. Yeah. And this is an aid in living that way. So the internet's a great source. It can be a bad source if you use it wrong. But in today's world, it's wonderful. Wow. AI, it can be used in a right way if we learn how to harness it. We're infants in AI right now, but it can also be down the road a good tool. But we can't forget the human element.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Hughes, my goodness, what a privilege for us to have you here and our listeners to become more informed as a result of, you being here today, your words, your beautiful history, your incredible devotion to your faith. And thank you so very much for all you've done and for all you currently do, and I know all you're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege being here.
Good.
It took 90 plus episodes, guys, but we heard the word ontological on the podcast. I've been dying for that since we started. I wasn't going to be the person that said it, but Dr. Hughes said it, so
yes.
The tip of the cap to you. Thank you. That was amazing.
Yes.
There's going to be part 2, 3, 4, 5 on this one, but thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Guys, the series has been so good to us already. We've got another treat in store in 2 weeks' time. Father Kevin McEwen, who some of you guys might have been his parishioners at St. Paul's and most recently at St. John the Evangelist in Panama City. He's been down at the seminary for a few years, but he is a wonderful resource on the spiritual life. He's going to sit down with Bishop to just talk about how do you counsel the doubtful. So related to this one, but a little bit different, guiding people along through their faith journey and giving them courage to encounter the Lord. So we'll see you back in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumετspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.